Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to today's CAI webinar. We're pleased that you have taken the time to join us for this important discussion on lessons from the field and smarter plumbing strategies. Before I start and introduce today's panelists, I would like to thank our webinar sponsor, Leasy Services, for their support and helping CAI Canada in our goal of providing quality education to the condominium community. As a member of the CAI Education Committee and the board, I'm excited to provide an update on the upcoming CAI events that may be of interest to you. CAI will be offering a webinar on the topic of EVs in condos, still a hot topic, in late November, and we'll also host an in-person holiday luncheon on December 10th at Parkview Manor, featuring a panel of legal experts. Mark your calendars, please, now, and watch for further details to follow in the coming days. I'm also excited to announce that the date for the 2026 CAI Canada conference has been announced, and this one-day conference and trade show will take place on Tuesday, April 14th. This is a great event. We had a great show last year, so I welcome everyone to attend this. Sponsorships are available, and booth sales just launched today. So please visit our website at caicanada.com to book your space. Program information and delegate registration will open in early 2026. We look forward to seeing you all there. A few technical notes before we start. You will notice that the chat feature on the platform has been disabled. We do ask that you participate by posting any question that you may have in the Q&A feature. We will do our best to answer the questions throughout the session. And now I would like to introduce our panel. My name is Sam Soltani, and I'm the president and founder of Trace Consulting Group, and I will be moderating today's session. And I'll also interject here and there to provide some engineering commentary. Joining me today from the left side, Jake Fine from Lash Condo Law, Barbak Ardalan from Papak Management, and Rob Leasy of Leasy Services. Welcome, gentlemen. Let me start by first going through our agenda for today's important topic. So today we've divided this presentation into three main topics. We're going to start off with crisis management. This is when you've gone into the building and you've seen a big flood. This is when we need to respond effectively when things go wrong. We will then tie that into maintenance. We want to prevent these failures. How do we prevent these failures and avoid those insurance claims? And then we'll touch on capital projects. We've divided this section into two different parts: those planned reserve fund study replacements that we know are coming forward for us, and then the ad hoc expenditures due to a recent failure that we now need to deal with. All of this is tied under one theme that we'll hear a lot of us talk about today: proactive versus reactive management. That's going to be the theme of the presentation today. We all know that waterscapes are now among one of the most costly and disruptive issues in residential buildings, and I think they've now surpassed fire. We see so many more of these fire, floods, and claims for insurance companies, more than what we used to know of fire ones. So with that, I'm going to start off with Babak, from the management side and representative of the managers that are on the call today. Tell us a little bit about, that crisis management. You walk into your building and you get a call, of course, on a Friday at 11 o'clock at night. And Babak, we got a major flood in our hands. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you very much, Sam, for the introduction, and I'm pleased to be part of this panel representing the dilemmas and the issues that condo managers face quite frequently in multi-residential buildings. The experience of a water escape, which some of us refer to as floods, is very traumatic, and it puts you in a situation where your skill set and your management capabilities will have to come into action. You cannot do that by yourself. You'll need to do that with your team, who you have trained and you have prepared for this situation. So that as a group, as a team, you can provide the best services to your community and help manage the crisis situation and minimize the damages. People live there. It's not a building. It's not just brick and mortar. It's not a business place. It's people's home. So there's an emotional component to that as well. and they all look at you as the manager who is supposed to lead everyone to proper management of this situation. So as a manager, I would like to know from the panel, from the experts, what am I supposed to do? Give me a guideline, because there is no set of endorsed guidelines that go A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. And every building is different in terms of size. Every water escape is different in terms of the extension. How big is it? How rush is it? How important is it? How quickly is the water coming out? Is it a pinhole leak, or is it a 2-inch pipe that burst? So all those different kinds of scenarios come at you, and you need to have some kind of a reference point to get back to. And a panel of experts like this is needed to guide a manager into preparing a structure, preparing a plan, like an emergency plan, on how to confront and manage this situation. Not all buildings have a live-in superintendent. Not all buildings have a 24/7 security guard concierge sitting there and directing calls and interacting with the contractors. What is the most important thing that I need to look at? So those guidelines will hopefully come out of this session, and by the end of the session, managers will have more confidence, or at least know how to start preparing a document, a plan of action for these situations that sooner or later are going to come knocking on our doors.
Thank you, Babak. And I think the key word that you mentioned was having that emergency plan. And it doesn't need to be anything grand, and it could be a few steps, a few checklist items that you as a manager and your board have reviewed, and you have that plan. Okay, we get that flood and it's this time of the night. Who is the first person who needs to be contacted? Is our super capable of going in and knowing where that shutoff valve is? Does he know where that main shutoff valve is? Do we know if our valves are operational? Rob, let me come to you. You guys are the first ones that end up being at the site most of the time, especially for those more major floods. And again, this could be middle of the night for a major one, or it could be hey, we got a small pinhole leak. We got a little bit of water in one of the ceiling tiles. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen when you walk into this situation, what would work for you in the past, and give me a couple maybe scenarios where you walk into a building and no one knows where to even go and start, and tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, thanks, Sam, firstly, for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to participate in this, and thanks to their other panelists. So I guess to answer your question, we've seen it all. So we have many different examples of getting called, and like you said, from pinhole leaks to major floods. So usually what we do right away is try to get somebody on site right away. If we don't know where the leak is coming from, like in that moment, we have to do an investigation. So, I touch on what Babak was saying. It'd be, at that moment in time, it'd be nice to know if there's drawings on hand, if there's a valve tag chart on hand. Where's the spots where the water's from? If there's a super available on site, start asking questions, gathering info. All this is happening in minutes. So that's the first thing that we need to do, is that quick response investigation to try to find the source of the issue, and shutting it down before we could take the next steps.
And I think, again, having that, we still go to a lot of buildings where during a capital project, we ask for the valve chart and it's either outdated, or it's not working, or at worst, the valve chart is there. They're confident that it's correct, but then the valves have not been practiced. And we'll talk a little bit about that during the maintenance side, because nothing is worse than false pretense of, okay, I turned the valve off, and you're standing there and you still see that water gushing out because even though the handle turned, the valve body itself did not isolate the water. And those minutes during a flood are extremely important. A few minutes in a 2-inch pipe leaking can go from a $50,000 flood to a $100,000 flood. So every minute counts, and making sure you have some sort of an emergency plan, making sure that your valve chart is up to date, making sure that your super, if you do have a staff super, or if you have a plumbing contractor, that they're aware of it, and that those valves get exercised. And we'll talk a little bit about that during the maintenance side. Jake, I'm gonna go to you. I wanna kind of hear the legal stake during these big emergencies and how the legal gets involved, and what are your recommendations?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Well, you just made a great point, which is that the cost of the damage can increase exponentially in just a matter of minutes. It's important to remember that the condominium corporation is the first line of defense, both in reacting to stop the incident from occurring and mitigating any further damage that could result from the incident itself. And so you have to remember that this is an emergency. Can't wait for the unit owner to contact its insurer, for that insurer to then, bring in people to help deal with the situation. The condominium corporation has to deal with the emergency that is taking place immediately. And one thing we get questions on a lot is, well, if we go in and we start some mitigation work, and that requires to tear up components of the unit, how does the standard unit bylaw come into effect? Do we not touch those? How does that work? And the answer is, the standard unit bylaw does not come into play when we're doing emergency mitigation work. The condominium corporation has to act quickly to prevent further damage. This can be mold. In most cases, it is mold. And a lot of the times, and in most cases, the common elements are behind unit features. And those features have to come out in order to to properly protect the common elements. So don't worry about standard unit when we're dealing with mitigation. The number one goal is to ensure that the leak is stopped and that mitigation procedures are in place to prevent further damage. Additional things to remember for a condominium corporation: remember your rights under the Condominium Act. So under the Condominium Act, you do have access rights to a unit, and under your declaration, you likely have further access rights in the event of emergency. If the unit owner or resident is not home and you do access the unit, communication is very important. Let the unit owner know as soon as possible what is taking place and what steps they may take or maybe should take in their own right to protect themselves. And then most importantly, and I'm sure if any of you have dealt with a lawyer before, you've heard this, everything in writing, document everything. As I mentioned, this is likely going to be an issue with at least one insurer, and they're going to require documentation in order to make a payout to their client. From a condominium corporation, this is extra important for two reasons. Number one, for your own insurer, you want to make sure that your insurer does not deny your claim and that you have proper documentation for them. And secondly, if a condominium corporation is seeking any indemnity from the unit owner through, let's say, an insurance deductible clause, the condominium corporation wants to make sure that its documentation is airtight so that there's no way that that insurer can refuse to indemnify the corporation. So those are just a few items to deal with in a reactionary emergency situation. And legal generally doesn't get involved in this case, but these are a few tips that may help reduce the need for legal intervention at a later stage.
Documentation. That's great. Thank you, Jake. I think it's important for us to talk about the major type of plumbing that causes floods. And Rob, I'm going to come back to you to give us some real world examples, but I personally categorize major plumbing floods into 3 different categories. Let's call the first one joint separation. So this is common with metal pipes. So it could be a batt solder that comes apart. It could be a expansion joint on a riser that fails. So we're talking literally the system piping bursting itself, and it could take many different reasons. And sometimes it just happens out of nowhere. Sometimes it happens after a recently done project because something was not done right, or sometimes it could happen to an old pipe that has just lived its life and it's lasted that long, and at some point it fails. Backups, obviously, kitchen stack backups are a big one in the industry. I'm pretty I'm pretty confident that a lot of the corporations do have now, or I should at least should have some sort of a ongoing and depending on the demographic, yearly, biannually, sometimes every couple of years, some sort of a flushing and stack cleaning. But one item I want to talk about, and we'll touch on it a little bit later, is that don't just focus on the kitchen. The laundry stacks could also be in the same shape, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And of course, the last one is corrosion. So that could be corrosion from the inside, could be a lot of time corrosion from the outside. Remember, if your insulation around the pipe is not perfect, which over the years it just is not, there's a lot of pitting and corrosion that could happen from the condensation from the outside of the pipe. So that could also lead to failures. And then for our non-metallic pipes, openers and those type of pipes, the cracking of the pipe is the most common failure. Rob, tell me a little bit about some of these corrosions, what you've seen in the past. We don't want to scare the panel, but I think it's good to talk about some of these failures and where they end up going, because again, as Jake mentioned, they need to be documented, and we could be dealing with a $20,000 flood inside the unit, or as we have in the example here, talk about a $5 million damage.
Yeah, so I'll just go in order, like of the common causes. So of the joint separations, yeah, it could be as simple as a bad workmanship, bad solder job, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as the deck continues. But it could be PRV issues, mixing valve issues, expansion issues. So joint separation, definitely for sure. In the example that we had below on the slide here, so a 1/2-inch copper pipe separated within 10 minutes. At the end of it, when all the smoke settled, it was $5 million of damage, 6 months repair, 40 affected suites, and it was due to a PRV failure. So like Sam mentioned earlier, minutes equal millions of dollars. And it's something that, in this case here, it could have been prevented. The other one is kitchen and laundry stack backups. Again, like Sam said, most corporations do have a kitchen plan in place. Laundry, I guess Sam had some real world example of something that just came up recently. But yeah, kitchen backups, another big one. Usually we get involved for newer buildings when something does happen, and it's a reactive measure. But yeah, depending on what floor it is, usually kitchen stack backups, they're a little bit more isolated. But depending on what floor it is and how bad it is, it could travel down 3, 5 units, causing lots of damage. Like Babak said, these are people's homes. There's an emotional aspect to it. And then lastly, pipe corrosion, metal pipes, non-metal pipes. So, open-or piping, there's the CAI piping, but even as simple as stuff that's exposed in mechanical rooms and in the parkade, the cast iron piping, over time, it gets rusted, and, starts to crack, starts to fail. Those ones don't cause that much damage, but, it could be over somebody's Ferrari, and, depends where it happens, but those are, the 3 typical or the common major plumbing failures.
Thank you, Rob. And as we all know, a lot of these buildings that you folks manage did not come with those cleanouts on those vertical stacks. That's one of the major projects that we work on, where engineers come in, they review the drawings, and then we decide where these things go. Sometimes corporations start these projects ad hoc, hey, we need it on the 5th floor. Let's hire the plumber, go put this in. Plumber shows up, there's a fridge on the way. There's cabinets that are built and you can't put them in there. So plan for those clean out installations. Because again, this is a one-time investment. Once you put these on these stacks, you don't have to do them again if it's done right. If not done right, you put them on a floor, you're not putting it on the right spot, you continue having to do the same project over and over again.
Sam, just on that note there, about the cleanouts, like one of the number one responses we get from managers is, oh, the builder installed cleanouts, and or we already have cleanouts. Like typically the ones that the builder provided, we don't know where they are, and the cost for somebody to find them is almost the same cost as installing one in a proper accessible location, because the builder might put one in the ceiling, they might put one in random spots, and then it gets covered by drywall. And then the other thing is sometimes the builder, puts them underneath the kitchen sink, but they're only 2-inch and it's on a branch and it's not going to do a proper job. So
yeah, that's a big one, because there's a lot of these cleanouts installed on those 2-inch branches, and you cannot clean a 4-inch stack from that small 2-inch branch, and that's what a lot of the issues happen. Thank you for that. So we've had Babak, we've had now some responses. I think the key point takeaways were, have that emergency plan, make sure you document everything, and kind of know where to go. Hopefully we answered your question on what to do during an emergency, because I want to move on to the next phase.
I can take just a brief moment. First, I wanted to reassure the audience that all of this flood of information that is being run through, because of the time limitations, obviously, is going to be made available to you in form of the recording or summary through the CAI. So don't worry about missing any specific part of it. My highlights of the points that I think managers should take away from this, additional highlights, is try to play with the players, with the key players who understand, are familiar, and know the plumbing structure of your condominium community. You don't go to a different dentist every time you have an issue with your teeth. You go to somebody who understands the history, knows your needs, and will not waste time trying to familiarize themselves with the issues that your specific building has. Take pictures. These days, it's very common for all of us to carry all kinds of technology with us. The more pictures that you have, it will support you and will make it easier to make a case in either direction. And keep the communication going on. Just because you know where you stand, the residents in the building don't necessarily have access to that information. So within a reasonable interval of time, post notices, let them know when this experience is going to come relief. And accidents happen. It's a reality. We have to accept that accidents happen. All of this is an effort trying to minimize the impact of those accidents that are going to happen. How can we best manage them and look for the next one and be prepared? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Babak. And so that's really important, because your dentist example is right on. And this is why we always recommend that you do have some sort of a plumbing maintenance in place. Every corporation, and I'll let you get a few words in there, Babak, but at least from my side, I know every corporation has an HVAC maintenance contract. And when we go to them and talk about a plumbing maintenance contract, it's either, well, we call the plumber when there's a flood, or, I think our HVAC guy, I think he does that. I thought he does that at least. What do you find, Babak, in the buildings you guys manage?
Yeah, that has been my pet peeve for a long time. As managers, we are responsible, or our goal should be protecting the communities, the condominium corporation's assets. So we have preventive maintenance programs for the elevator, for the garage door, for the fitness equipment, for other, for the panel, for the fire safety panel, and for the pump that pushes air into the dry sprinkler system. We check them. But when it comes to the plumbing components of the building, which are extensive, they're important, and they can cause a lot of damage, I have yet to see a plan, an ongoing maintenance service or inspection service like we do for fan codes. I know that we inspect regularly fan codes, because if they fail, everybody is in trouble. Okay, we do the kitchen stack cleaning, and it's basically reactive. The rest of the calls to the plumbers are made in a reactive mode. When there is a failure, when there is a leak, when there is, how come we don't have a preventive maintenance culture for the plumbing component of our buildings. I think the most important message out of this session could be, let's start thinking about it. Let's start planning for it, and let's start making a case for it to our boards of directors, who should care about saving some money. Let's compare the amount of funds that we allocate to the plumbing repairs every year versus how much it would take us to inspect them regularly, maintain them, and be prepared for them, and change a pipe maybe a couple of months before it's going to fail and cause a $200,000 repair.
Yeah, that's great. And reminder that, unfortunately, most of the plumbing is hidden behind drywall. And that makes things even worse because it's harder to even get to it. But there's so many components of the plumbing system that if they are looked at and if they're maintained, a lot of the stuff behind the drywall won't become an issue. For example, I always tell corporations, you're spending sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars on your HVAC. Plumbing is actually very small because the tasks on the plumbing maintenance are a lot smaller. Exercising a valve is very fast, very low cost. But if that valve fails and now you need to replace it, you have to drain the riser, you have to shut the system down, inconvenience your owners, put a new valve on, restart the system, and potentially deal with a disruption to the entire flow. Wouldn't that be easier if you had a program in place where once a year somebody went in and turned that valve on and off, and your valve will last forever that way? Preventive maintenance plans are similar to HVAC. There are, and we'll share with you on the next slide. I'll ask Rob to go through it with us. We've prepared a very high-level template to at least start you with thinking about, okay, what are the components that I need to have maintenance with? How often at a very least I need to look at these, but don't be shy to ask somebody, have your engineers, even if you have a good plumber that can do this for you, have them come in and help you customize it. No two buildings are the same. Yes, everybody has PRVs, but there are different types of PRVs. There are PRVs that do different tasks. There are, anti-scalding stations that are mechanical, and there are ones that are now called smart. They require a different type of maintenance. So make sure that as you go and build this template, that at some point you try and customize it, because again, these are one-time costs. Once you have this set up for your building, it doesn't change. You may change one valve for another, but the maintenance most likely will remain the same. Jake, I want to go to you. Tell me a little bit about legal's take on maintenance and what you recommend for us.
Yeah, well, Sam, you hit the nail on the head with two huge issues. Number one is that there are a lot of plumbing components that are contained behind drywall, number one. And number two, I've seen some funky condominium corporations in my time as a lawyer. And, it's rare that you find two declarations that are the same. And so a lot of the times, there are plumbing features that are behind drywall, but are the unit owner's responsibility to repair. That unit owner isn't going to be conducting maintenance on that pipe that they can't see. And so it would behoove the corporation to then, implement this maintenance program to at least look at that pipe or deal with that pipe so that any issues that could arise can be prevented beforehand. Now, the corporation won't be carrying out maintenance to that pipe, but because of Section 92 of the Condominium Act, if this pipe is the unit owner's responsibility to maintain or repair, and the corporation, through its preventive maintenance program, determines that there is an issue that requires maintenance or repair, can actually require that owner to carry out that maintenance or repair to prevent an issue from happening. So this preventive maintenance program is very important for plumbing features, especially for those that are behind drywall that are unit owner responsibilities. And one other very important preventive maintenance aspect isn't actually maintenance, but it's the implementation of bylaws. Now, there's two very important bylaws that a condominium corporation is permitted to pass. One is a standard unit bylaw, and the other is an insurance deductible bylaw. Now, the standard unit bylaw sets out, in the event of insurable damage, what the condominium corporation's insurance is going to be responsible for and what a unit owner's insurance is going to be responsible for. Now, that does help after the fact, but in a insurance deductible bylaw is very important because it can actually help a condominium corporation in reducing the cost I would have to spend to repair in the event of insurable damage. And so by implementing these two bylaws, the corporation can carry out its own preventative maintenance to help reduce costs and help potentially reduce insurance claims, insurance deductibles, and insurance premiums.
Thank you, Jake. Rob, let me go to you. Let's talk a little bit about maintenance tactics. I want you to talk to me a little bit about what you guys see in terms of maintenance. I know you and I discussed a little bit about PRVs. I know that's a big one. Let me turn it over to you and tell me a little bit about what you guys find on site.
Okay, so so like we said, the critical items, PRVs, mixing valves, shut-off valves, judo filters, the stack flushing. Those are the number one culprits. Just to kind of look at these pictures that we have over here. Let's on the left-hand side, the PRVs. This is just a sample of a before and after. So like inside the PRVs, there's, without getting too technical, there's a bunch of mechanical components, springs, etc., diaphragms. There's water flowing through them, all the time. Water has impurities. Over time, it builds up. And then that's what you get. Like that's a before picture. That PRV wasn't cleaned. I think it was 2 or 3 years. It wasn't cleaned. That was the buildup. That causes all the mechanical stuff not to function properly, and the pressure is going to start to rise, and then you're going to get pressure and temperature issues. And then on the right side, there's the after picture. That's how it looks perfectly clean. And again, that service is hundreds of dollars in comparison to thousands of dollars to put in a new PRV. Typically, HVAC contractors don't look at this at all. And it is something that we've seen in the past that, corporations just like, oh, when it breaks, we'll fix it. But, once a year, a couple $100, okay, mind you, there might be dozens of these in the building, or there might be 4, but like per unit, we're talking about hundreds of dollars of preventative maintenance to keep the building, comfortable in terms of pressure and temperature, and also from preventing catastrophic failures. The next picture is again more build up on the springs and internal components. That hose, that's a braided supply for a toilet line. That was due to PRV being neglected. The system got overpressurized, burst. Luckily in that instance there, the damage was localized, but it was still, $15,000-$20,000 of damage. And then the other common one is kitchen stack cleaning. This is just an example of before and after. We see this like all the time. I have, I was showing Sam and the rest of the panel, in the days prior as we were planning for this, I had like, dozens and dozens of pictures, and, this is the least gross one that we decided to add to the slideshow. But
it's right after lunch, Rob. So we had to, we had to make sure. Yeah.
That's why it's after lunch. Yeah. So, so that's, before and after picture, that's completely plugged up with grease. A lot of times, we hear, oh, but, we snaked it. But like, look at that before picture. The snake is just going to like punch a hole, the diameter of the snake, so they might, punch a few holes in it, but, you need to flush it. You need to put a flusher down there and then blast it away. So it's like perfectly clean, like the after picture. So, those are, some of the stuff that we're seeing on the site. For the drainage stacks, lastly for this, it's often done reactively and inconsistently. So like Sam mentioned before, ensure you have cleanouts installed right on the stack. Don't use the ones on the branch. And, the ones that the builder provided, you're likely going to spend the same amount of money trying to locate it, and it might be in a ceiling where the plumbers are going to have a hard time accessing it. Laundry stacks, very important. Sam's going to touch upon that too. They require cleaning too. So not only snaking is not adequate enough, you need to flush it, and then you have to ensure your plumbing contractor uses a camera afterwards so that you have assurance that it's clean and you have documentation that it's clean. Make sure that their cameras have timestamps, date stamps, the unit number, the date, all that kind of stuff, and have a reoccurring schedule or contract for not only the kitchen stack flushing, but all the items that we're talking about today. And we'll kind of go through a checklist later on, and we'll kind of walk through that. And the last thing I'm going to say is frequency depends on the building's demographics. If you're managing a building and it's all a bunch of young professionals and they're ordering Uber Eats every day, they're not cooking, the stacks are not going to get dirty that fast. Whereas if it's a building, families, lots of cooking, grease, fats, oil, that one's going to have to get done a little bit more. So you kind of have to manage that, and depending on the building's demographic.
Yeah, I just want to make 2 quick points. With the PRVs, just a reminder that the plumbing system is all interconnected to one another. And the minute that PRV is out of tune of where it's supposed to be, you get overpressurization, underpressurization, temperature fluctuation, crossover, right? Because if your hot PRV is working, but your cold is not, what's going to happen is you're going to get cold water that's hot, or you're going to get hot water that just takes forever to cool down. And if we don't do the maintenance, and you call us as engineers and say, hey, find the problem for us, now we're going chasing our tail, right? Because the signs could be from anything. And it could be as simple as those springs are just filled with goo and they're just not doing what they're supposed to do. With the laundry stacks, more and more of these we're seeing. Remember that the Ontario Building Code has stringent requirements of where laundry stacks could be connected to. There's a concept called the SUD zone, where the Ontario Building Code determines how far off the bottom stack, where that final turn goes into your P1 and whatnot, how far above that you cannot connect anything to. So what we've seen in the past, especially with some of the newer buildings, where developers have learned to almost circumvent this requirement, where they're installing small auxiliary branches and then connecting that to the main. So technically speaking, they get away from meeting the code, but that still is not solving the problem of that SUD coming back up and causing an issue. So if you do have first off, I highly recommend that you start looking into your laundry stacks as well. They probably don't need to be cleaned as often, but we've seen a bunch of big floods that have come out of them. But also, if you do ever snake something, and we have buildings that did a full flushing, did everything the right way, they went through a massive project of installing clean outs, and literally within months after, they came back and said, hey, we got another flood. Well, how could this be? And then when we actually now go look at the final, how the stacks were installed, the stacks that were connected to one another that shouldn't have been. There's auxiliaries that the as-built show they're supposed to go to the 6th floor or 4th floor to connect all those. And during the new construction, the developer just never brought that pipe all the way and they connected it to the main stack. So if you do see something that doesn't make sense, have your engineers come in and do a quick assessment for you on that. Let's move on to the next slide. I think this is a great slide we talked about that high-level template of, at the very least, where and what equipment need to have some sort of a maintenance to them. Again, as Babak mentioned, this will be available and will be sent to you, but please ensure that, this is a very high-level list. There could be more equipment, there could be less equipment. The planned maintenance and testing could be different based on your building, but this is a good start for you to at least get an understanding of what are the items in my building that would constitute plumbing and that I need to have a separate plumbing maintenance for. Rob, can you run us through this list a little bit?
Okay. Yeah. So some of these you're gonna recognize them. They may be familiar to, and we'll go over all of them. So like backflow preventers. This is a city requirement. They're gonna send, if you don't get it done, they're gonna send you a letter to remind you over and over again. So this is not something that is neglected, but it is something that we just wanted to put on the checklist. So there's a yearly requirement by the city to have them tested. And in terms of planned maintenance, it's not really applicable because when we do our test, if it fails the test, we're gonna give you a deficiency report, and then it's either going to get repaired at that time or replaced. So that, again, that's a requirement by the city. Mixing valves. We at a minimum would like to come once a year to do planned maintenance on that. So again, like a pressure reducing valve, we're going to take it apart, we're going to clean it, put it back together. If anything's ripped, a gasket or something like that, We have repair kits that are readily available. We like to do that once a year. In terms of on a monthly basis, it's more cost effective to have the building super or some staff that works for the building to look at the readings on a monthly basis. And if anything's out of whack, to let the manager know, who let the plumber know, and then it could be looked into why it's running that way. A note I put: keep repair kits in stock on site to reduce the downtime. So even with a maintenance contract in place, let's say we come here today to do the maintenance, we take it apart, and then we find the gaskets ripped. We have to stop what we're doing, go to the supplier, pick up the repair kit. Maybe it's not in stock. Maybe they could get it in a couple of days. But then that mixing valve is going to be offline for a couple of days, and you're paying us extra than the preventative maintenance contract to go do this work. Where if you keep the repair kits on stock on site, we could just grab it, do the repair, close it up, and then replenish it, and we're in and out. Same applies for the pressure reducing valves. They're very similar maintenance procedure as the mixing valves. Take them apart, clean them, put them back together, use a repair kit if needed, monthly inspections by the super, and keeping repair kits on site, in stock on site. Judo filter, not every building has one of these. Some do, some don't. Again, recommend a yearly planned maintenance contract. Come in, clean the filters, make sure everything's running properly. Have your building super go by on a monthly basis just to have a look at it, visual inspection, and if there's anything that looks weird, call your plumbing service provider. Flow meters. Again, not all the buildings have them. The newer ones do in the city of Toronto. It's a yearly requirement. They're going to send you a letter to remind you. But if you want to be proactive, you could have the plumbers look at that as well. Planned maintenance, it's just a meter. There's nothing really to maintain. So that's not applicable. Again, that's required by the city. Just on that note, usually the flow meters, when they need to be calibrated, we send them off to a lab. They come back. 90% of the time, they need to be replaced because the water quality going through them over a period of time damages them. So that's just a side note, maybe budget for that, but that's another discussion for another day. Some pumps, monthly inspections by the super, visual inspection, just have a look at them, make sure that the levels, the floats are working. And then for planned maintenance, have your plumbing service provider come at least quarterly just to make sure that they're mechanically working with the controls and on hand, just to make sure they're working, because those, they're in the parquet, they're not going to do that much damage, but it could cause a big mess. Valves, we talked about it a few times already. Those, have your super throughout the year, turn them off and on, exercise them. If they don't get used, they could rust open or closed, and they could get stiff, they could break. And, that's something that a super should do when they're walking around. It's not really applicable to hire a plumber to do that. Also on that, for liability reasons, plumbers don't like to do that, because if you, let's say, hired me to exercise your valves and then I missed one, and then that caused some sort of damage, I'd be, or plumbers would be liable for that. So that's not something that we like to do, but that's something that super could do, no problem. Kitchen stack flushing. So we talked about this before. It should get done on a yearly basis at the very minimum, or more, depending on the demographics. Notes, like we mentioned before, install cleanouts on the main stacks, not underneath the sink. You're not gonna get the best job unless it's right on the main stack. And lastly, expansion joints. They need to be looked at, an inspection at least quarterly by the super. Again, that's something you could hire even your HVAC contractor to look at them, or a plumber, but a super could easily do this job. Just look at them, see what the readings are, put them in a binder. If anything is out of zone or looks out of whack, report it to your contractor, then they could further investigate the reason why. And again, like I said, document all the readings. And then at the bottom here, your plumbing contractor should provide you with an asset list like HVAC contractors do of all the plumbing assets in the building. So you have them, you know where they are, make model, serial number. And when it's a newer building, the developer should provide you with a valve tag chart. And if you don't have one, you're going to have to invest in having one created. A plumbing contractor should be able to do this in a day or so. So, that's a sample maintenance checklist. We're saying it's sample because this is going to be customized for your building. So I'll turn it over to Sam now.
Thank you, Rob. I've been trying to answer some of the great questions that have been coming in. I do want to answer live some of these questions. We've got about 15 minutes, so we'll try to go a little bit faster on these last couple of slides. Babak, we talked about that initial flood. We talked about making sure that you have some sort of a maintenance program in place. But now it's time for a project, whether it was planned or unplanned. Where do you see on that front?
As a manager who's the facilitator between the decision-making body, being your board of directors, and the regular service providers, like the HVAC plumbing contractors, the consulting engineer who has the authority to tell us if we're going in the right direction or not. My job as a manager is to make sure that there are no surprises, that everything is clear, transparent, and documented. Because experience tells us that the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. You try to cut corners, you try to save money, you try to do something faster, and without paying attention to properly documenting everything and getting the signature for there and the initial for this part. And then somebody will come back at the later time and start pointing fingers at you and saying, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do this? So make sure that everything is properly documented, the decisions are minuted, and everybody is clear, and whatever we are doing is transparent, and all players in this picture, from the superintendent to the concierge to the residents to the board of directors to the regular maintenance provider and the contractors who will do this major capital project, whatever it is, changing a pump or replacing the fresh air makeup unit all by itself, altogether. Make sure that everybody is clear and understands where we're going. Try to keep it on schedule and try to inform the residents as to the progress of this project, because one way or another, it is going to affect the day-to-day life of people's homes.
Thank you. Thank you, Babak. Jake, I want to get you in here to talk a little bit about an issue that you and I discuss constantly. And, when they come to legal too late, walk us through what we should do while the project is being either planned retroactively or emergency came. We have to do this project, but it's going to take some time to get the engineers to design it and put the package together. When do we come to the legal? Do we need to come, and when do we come to legal?
Yeah, so capital projects are its own thing. So, I know in a lot of cases with other projects, the corporation will come to the lawyer and say, hey, we have this contract. Can you review it? We're going to sign it. That's not the case with capital projects. Capital projects, you need to come to the lawyer right away, even if that's the beginning, just to say, hey, we've engaged Trace Consulting. We're planning to do a boiler replacement. We're just letting you know we're going to want you to review the contract. And when the time comes, we'll come to you. The problem is, as Sam mentioned, corporations are coming to legal too late. And because of certain decisions of the Supreme Court of Canada, the corporation's lawyer may not be able to have any effect on amending a contract at that point. Now, there is one potential, because the CCDC contract that is used for capital projects is standard form, some corporations may feel that it's not necessary. However, just because the CCDC is standard form doesn't mean A, that it's drafted in the corporation's best interest, and B, doesn't mean that further provisions can be included to better protect the condominium corporation. So again, I think the most important thing before the call for tender goes out, that is when the condominium corporation's lawyer should be involved, drafting supplementary conditions for the CCDC to ensure that those supplementary conditions are included in the call for tender so that there are no issues with respect to changes in the future. The other thing too is, these are sometimes 6 to 7 figure projects. And the same way that there's a budget for engineering, consulting, there should be a legal budget. Lawyers, we are very happy when we can prevent a problem from happening. And a lot of the times we're getting calls to clean up a mess afterwards where we weren't brought in. And that is generally more expensive for a condominium corporation. So you should budget money on legal to prevent the problem from happening instead of reacting to a problem afterwards and scrambling to try to fix it.
Thank you, Jake. I do want to talk a little bit about 2 items that come up normally part of these capital projects. And somebody actually asked us in the chat, repair versus replacement versus lining. Lining, as we all know, had its day and age up to about 10 years ago. I still want to say that lining does have certain applications. I always say if you have a 6-inch main sanitary line that runs under a marble floor, lining could be the answer rather than replacement. But I believe the experience has now shown that lining 2-inch or 3-inch risers inside buildings is a disaster, and it's not feasible. It does not stick to the pipe, and almost every building that was lined up to 10 years ago have now gone through a full replacement. Next one I want to talk about is Uponor failure. I get a lot of people that are anxious and saying, look, we just went through a CAI replacement. Now we put Uponor. Now Uponor's failing. Oh my God, are we in the same situation? The answer is no. Uponor is not the same failure as CAI. CAI was just bad chemistry, a bad pipe made. Uponor is a great product, but it does have, unfortunately, a lot of terms and conditions, a lot of maintenance items. Pressure and temperature must be controlled in an Uponor system. You cannot install Uponor where copper was, or CAI was, but you cannot install it like copper and let it sit there and say, okay, we've replaced our pipes and now we're good to go. We'll look at it in home. However, it does require a maintenance plan on its own. Balancing valves must be installed. They must be looked at to make sure that the requirements from Uponor do not go higher than what it's called for. Because if you pass that, what basically happens is the pipe will fail, the warranty will not cover it. And so most of the failures so far have been on the recirculation system because it's a constant flow. And a lot of times we start by doing an investigation of, can we go to Uponor? Was it a bad pipe? And almost in every sense, in every case, it becomes down that either it was not maintained, that the temperature spikes were there and they were ignored, or that the pressure, because those PRVs were not working, went to a point where the pipe just could not handle it. So great product, but a lot of terms and conditions. So make sure you understand that your system with the Uponor is much, much different than a system with copper alone. I want to do a quick recap. So as we discussed, before a flood happens, make sure you have a plan for your plumbing strategies. Have a list of who you want to contact. Provide those periodic training to your site super or building staff, whomever is in charge of dealing with a flood, or even could be a property manager, and adapt a maintenance program to reduce those chances of failure. When a flood happens, make sure you document it, know who to call in order to deal with that flood, and make sure you investigate later to determine how to avoid it again in the future. If one piece of piping failed due to something, chances are the next one 5 feet down the line will probably fail in the future as well. And then when you're doing a major capital project, ensure legal is brought on early to review those supplementary conditions. As Jake mentioned, this is a massive problem where we tender, we award, we're about to sign the CCDC, and all these changes now come in from legal, which is essentially too late at that time. Ensure you have a proper scope of work. So have your engineers assist with that. Ensure you have proper oversight throughout the project, right? Have whomever put that scope of work together should be knowledgeable enough to make sure that they actually do what we envisioned. All these meetings we have, we plan a project, we put it on paper, we go to construction, and the plumber essentially just does what he's used to doing, and he's not really following what's in those 100 pages that are being submitted by your engineers. Keep the community involved. Town halls are huge for major projects. Every single time there's no town hall, problematic. Every time you get in front of owners, even the buildings where everybody's worried that there's no way we could have a town hall, every time we've had it, it's been a disaster. If you have a good team behind you, behind that main table, at the end of every town hall, at least in my experience, the past 15 years, most of the residents are, when can we start? Let's get this going. We now understand this is a requirement. Keep these owners involved. It'll cut down headaches for everybody. Ensure your project is closed. Projects get done. The last time the plumber comes becomes the end of the project. That is not the end of the project. You need your as-built. You need those warranty letters. Make sure your consultants, if they're involved with the project, get those stuff from you, soft and hard copy. And of course, don't forget to review your budget. These random projects that come in, you need to now talk to your reserve fund planners to see, hey, we just spent $1 million that wasn't planned. How do we make up for this shortfall, right? The reserve is not unlimited. All the monies in the reserve are reserved for something else. So if you're now all of a sudden spending $1 million out of nowhere, you need to replenish that fast, and you need to have a plan for that budget. Any final comments from the panel before I go down to questions?
I'm just gonna add one just because Michael just put something in the Q&A. He just said that just take the opportunity to remind everybody. Also, at this time of year, we didn't talk about it, but to winterize your systems, your plumbing systems at this time of year. So it's a very good reminder.
Thank you, Michael. Before we go to questions, I just want to once again thank our sponsor, Lisi Services. We've answered a bunch of the questions, but there's a couple I wanted to have a discussion with bidets. Rob, good question. Do these bidets need to be installed by a plumber? Because owners go install them. These are a major cause of failure. I know there's a lot of corporations that have now banned these. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen with these.
Yeah, just that. They're often bought not from our plumbing suppliers. They're usually not CSA approved. The ones that we're seeing, people are getting them from Temu and stuff like that. Or ordering them off of Instagram, or just they're not from CSA approved manufacturers or suppliers. And they can be installed, by the homeowner, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And if anybody needs to have those installed, 100% they should go to a licensed plumber. And I personally think bidet seats are better. They're a little bit more money, but they are better. They are CSA approved, and they're made for that. But if they do want to have that wand style for preference reasons, get your plumbing contractor to install it, and they'll source one that is not going to cause issues.
Rob, one more for you, and then I want to have the last one for Jake before we sign off. Hose bibs, when you winterize, do you leave them open?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jake, there's one for you. When there's a flood and the corporation does not have a standard unit bylaw, but does contain a provision in the declaration of an owner is responsible for damages, can the corporation then go back charge for both painting, hardwood, flooring, pretty much for all the damage? Can they do that?
Fact specific, but I would say here's what you need to know. Number one, get a standard unit bylaw passed. It's going to prevent any issues in the future. Number two, the general rule of thumb is that without a standard unit bylaw, the standard unit definition is the unit at the time of construction. This is a lot easier with newer buildings, but with older buildings, obviously, we can see the difficulty in that. The third answer is, well, it depends on what caused the flood. We have to look at the insurance deductible provisions to see if there are provisions in which would permit the condominium corporation to charge back the lesser of the cost of the insurance deductible or the cost to repair the damage to the offending owner. So there's a number of fact-specific issues that need to be determined in something like this.
Babak, Jake, and Rob, thank you for being on this panel today and giving us your expertise. Thank you again to our sponsor, Lisi Services, for sponsoring today's event. Once again, don't forget, we've got 3 events coming up at CAI Canada. We have a great webinar of EVs and condos in November. on December 10th. We'd love to see all of you for an in-person holiday luncheon. It's a great time of the year to kind of put faces to the names. And please don't forget to register for the 2026 CAI Canada Conference, which will take place on Tuesday, April 14th. A very intimate event. If you've been to one of these, we've got a lot of great comments on this, and there's always great food. So please don't forget to come and see us. On behalf of the whole panel, thank you all for attending today's seminar, and we hope to see you on the next one in November. Thanks, everyone.